Landscape designers charge anywhere from $100 to several $100s an hour. And after researching exactly what they do for that money, here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of it isn't expensive plants or fancy materials. It's 10 specific, repeatable tricks that cost almost nothing, that any homeowner can copy this weekend. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what those tricks are, why they work on a psychological level, and how to do every single one of them yourself, for the price of a few bags of mulch and an afternoon. Let's get into it. Here's the structure for today. We're counting down 10 designer secrets, starting with the simplest one-afternoon fixes and building up to the techniques that take a little more effort but completely transform how expensive a yard reads to the human eye. Stick around because tip number 1 is the one professional designers say makes the single biggest difference of anything on this list, and it costs almost nothing. Number 10, sharpen your edges. Most people don't consciously notice clean edging when they see it, but they absolutely notice when it's missing. A lawn that bleeds messily into a flower bed, with grass creeping into the mulch and mulch spilling onto the grass, reads as neglected no matter how nice the plants inside that bed actually are. A crisp, defined line where lawn meets bed does something almost magical to the eye. It tells your brain that everything else in the yard was done on purpose. Professional landscapers call this definition, and it's often described as the frame around a painting. The artwork inside might be beautiful, but without the frame, it looks unfinished. You can create this with nothing more than a half-moon edging tool or a flat spade, cutting a clean trench along every bed and walkway. Work when the soil's slightly moist. Angle your tool to create a small recessed channel that keeps grass from creeping back in, and recut it every 3 to 4 weeks during the growing season. It takes about 15 minutes per pass and costs you nothing if you already own a spade. This single 15-minute habit is the difference between a yard that looks fine and one that looks finished. Number 9. Pick one mulch color and commit. Here's something almost nobody thinks about. Mulch isn't just protective ground cover, it's a deliberate design tool. And the color you choose changes the entire mood of your yard. Black mulch creates a bold, modern contrast that makes bright flowers practically glow against it and makes garden beds look more architecturally intentional. Brown mulch feels warmer and more traditional, blending naturally into cozier, classic-style yards. Natural, undyed mulch fades to a soft gray over time and gives a relaxed, woodland feel. The designer secret here isn't which color you pick, it's that you pick one and use it everywhere. Frame your entire foundation with the same mulch color, use it consistently across every bed, and suddenly your whole property reads as a single cohesive design instead of a collection of separate, unrelated patches. As a rule of thumb, light-colored siding pairs beautifully with the bold contrast of black or dark brown mulch, while darker exteriors balance better with a lighter brown. Spread it 2 to 3 inches deep, and for an extra professional touch, smooth it with the back of a plastic rake in long sweeping motions instead of leaving it clumpy. That one small move is what separates a DIY mulch job from one that looks like a crew did it. Plant in odd-numbered groups, never pairs. This is a genuine, formally taught principle in landscape design schools, and once you know it, you'll start seeing it everywhere in yards that feel expensive. It's called the rule of 3. Grouping plants in odd numbers, 3, 5, 7, creates a visual balance that the human eye reads as natural and intentional. Even numbers, especially pairs, tend to look stiff, mechanical, and oddly artificial, like 2 soldiers standing guard, rather than a garden that grew this way on purpose. The fix costs you nothing extra at the nursery. Instead of buying one of this and one of that scattered randomly across your yard, what designers call the onesie-twosie approach, buy 3 or 5 of the same plant and cluster them together. Repeat that same cluster in 2 or 3 other spots around your property. This single habit, repetition in odd numbers, is one of the simplest and most effective tricks in professional design, and it costs exactly the same amount of money as planting things randomly. You're not spending more, you're just spending smarter. Number 7, repeat plants instead of collecting them. This is closely related to the rule of three, but it deserves its own spot because it solves a different mistake: the instinct to buy one of every interesting plant you see at the garden center. Designers call this plant collecting, and it's one of the fastest ways to make a yard look chaotic and amateur, even with an enormous budget. The professional approach is the opposite. Pick just 3 or 4 favorite plants and repeat them deliberately throughout your yard, rather than scattering 10 different species with no relationship to each other. Repetition builds visual cohesion. Your eye recognizes the pattern, relaxes into it, and reads the whole space as unified and polished, rather than as 10 separate decisions made on 10 separate days. You'll also spend less money doing this, because buying multiples of 3 plant varieties is almost always cheaper than buying one each of 10 different varieties, especially if you buy in bulk from a wholesale nursery, rather than picking up small pots individually. Number 6. Match your plant size to your house. Here's a mistake that's everywhere, and it instantly signals budget landscaping, even when every plant is healthy and well cared for. Tiny 2-foot shrubs planted against a large 2-story house. The scale is simply wrong, and wrong scale reads as cheap no matter how much money was actually spent. Designers use a simple visual trick to fix this. Picture a string running from your front door diagonally up to the edge of your house, roughly 2/3 of the way up the wall. The plants flanking the corners of your home should reach just below that line. That proportion is what makes a house look like it's nestled comfortably into its landscaping instead of looking stark and disconnected from it, like an afterthought stuck onto a blank lawn. The fix doesn't necessarily mean spending more, smaller, younger trees and shrubs of the right ultimate mature size are often cheaper than buying something already large, and most will catch up to the right scale within just a couple of growing seasons. Number 5. Switch to warm white lighting, always 2700 Kelvin. If you only take one technical fact away from this entire video, make it this one, because it's the single most common mistake homeowners make when they finally do invest in landscape lighting. Color temperature, measured in Kelvin, determines whether a light reads as warm and inviting or harsh and institutional. Lower Kelvin numbers mean warmer, more amber light. Higher numbers mean cooler, bluer light. For almost every residential application, pathways, patios, uplighting trees, accenting your foundation, professional lighting designers default to 2700 Kelvin warm white, sometimes stepping up slightly to 3000 Kelvin for a touch more crispness. This is the exact color temperature of an old incandescent bulb or candlelight, and it's flattering to skin tones, makes stone and wood materials look rich rather than washed out, and creates that unmistakable high-end resort glow after dark. The mistake almost everyone makes is grabbing whatever LED bulbs are cheapest at the hardware store, which often default to a cold, bluish 4000 or 5000 Kelvin, the same harsh light you'd find in a parking garage. Swapping those bulbs for proper 2700 Kelvin warm white fixtures costs you nothing beyond the bulbs themselves, and it is, almost universally, the cheapest, most dramatic upgrade on this entire list. Number 4. Use uplighting on trees and architectural features. Once you've got the right color temperature, the next designer secret is where you point the light. Most amateur outdoor lighting just floods an area evenly from above. Professional designers instead use uplighting, placing a light source low to the ground, directly underneath a tree or an architectural feature, and letting the light travel upward. The effect is dramatic and surprisingly cheap to recreate. A tree that looks like background scenery during the day suddenly becomes the dramatic centerpiece of your entire yard at night, with its branch structure throwing shadows and taking on an almost sculptural quality. This works especially well in winter, when bare branches catch the light in interesting patterns. A handful of inexpensive spike-mounted LED uplights, the kind you push directly into the soil with no wiring expertise required, can transform 2 or 3 key trees into focal points that look like they were designed by a professional lighting consultant. Number 3. Build a gravel or mulch path instead of concrete. A defined path through a yard adds structure and visual interest practically anywhere you put it, but most people assume path automatically means an expensive poured concrete or paver installation costing thousands of dollars. It doesn't have to. A simple gravel or mulch pathway accomplishes almost the same visual job. It adds intentional structure, gives the eye a clear route to follow, and breaks up a flat, boring stretch of lawn at a tiny fraction of the cost. Gravel runs roughly $2 to $8 per bag, covering up to 2 cubic feet of coverage, which means even a meaningfully long path can often be completed for well under $100 in materials. Define the edges of the path, clearly using the same edging technique from tip number 10, and the finished result reads as deliberate hardscaping rather than a cheap workaround, because functionally, that's exactly what it is. Number 2, layer your plants by height. This is the technique that takes a flat, boring flower bed and turns it into something that looks professionally composed, and it costs nothing beyond planning where things go before you dig. Designers call it layering, and the rule is simple. Tall plants go at the back of a bed, medium-height shrubs go in the middle, and low-growing plants and ground cover go up front, closest to the lawn or path. This single piece of planning creates visual depth in a way that flat, single-height plantings never can. Your eye reads the bed almost like a piece of theater staging, moving naturally from front to back, taking in texture and color in layers instead of all at once in a single flat plane. It costs you absolutely nothing extra. It only requires that you actually plan bed depth and plant placement before you start digging, rather than just buying whatever looks nice and plugging it in wherever there's a gap. Use reclaimed and found materials for hardscaping. This is the tip that professional designers consistently point to as having the single biggest visual impact to dollar ratio of anything on this entire list, which is exactly why it earns the top spot. Reclaimed materials, old bricks, salvaged wood, weathered stone, even repurposed cinder blocks, bring genuine character and a sense of history to a yard that brand new big box materials simply cannot fake, no matter how much you spend on them. The most popular budget version of this trick. Stack cinder blocks at each end and lay sturdy wood planks across the top to create instant outdoor bench seating. You can build it in under an hour with zero carpentry experience, paint or stain it to match your overall color scheme, and finish it off with a couple of weatherproof outdoor cushions. The total cost typically lands at a small fraction of what a comparable store-bought outdoor bench would run you. And because reclaimed materials carry visible texture, weathering, and history, the finished result frequently reads as more expensive and more intentional than the mass-produced version sitting in a big box store catalog. So that's the list. 10 designer secrets, and here's the thread that connects every single one of them. Almost none of them cost real money. What they cost is attention to color consistency, to proportion, to grouping, to the specific Kelvin number on a light bulb package. Professional designers aren't charging you for materials. They're charging you for knowing which 15 small decisions, made correctly, add up to a yard that reads as expensive. And now you know every single one of them too. If this kind of breakdown helped you see your own yard differently, go ahead and like the video, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.